Super excited to get started on this next demo with you. We're going to go ahead and install a read-only domain controller. And if you're as excited about this option as I am because of the additional security it provides, then I know you're going to find a lot of value in seeing how to set this up. So there are a few steps you need to take to make sure that this will allow you to promote it. The first one is to get your network card settings so that the DNS server is set to that main domain controller in your lab forest. So that's the very first domain controller we set up for adding a domain controller to a new forest. So my IP address will be different than yours. I'm going to go ahead here and we're going to search for network and choose control panel. And sort by small icons. Go to the Network and Sharing Center. Click Change Adapter Settings. Right-click on the network card and choose Properties. Choose TCP IPv4 and click Properties. And then I'm going to have this use the static IP of that server. Click OK. Click close, close out. The next step is we need to actually join this workstation to the domain that is set up. So back here in the server manager, click local server, click workgroup, click change, choose member of domain. We're going to put in the domain name, click OK. You'll then need to fill in the administrator credentials for this domain. Click OK. When the prompt for the addition to the domain appears, in this case it says welcome to the Miller domain, click OK. Click OK to accept the fact that a restart must occur. And then click close. And then it'll prompt you to reboot. Go ahead and choose Restart Now. Now the server is back online and Server Manager is loading. We're going to just confirm that we see this workstation as joined to the domain. We'll do that by clicking on Local Server. Sometimes the screen does take a couple moments to load, so there could be a little bit of a delay. And then if we look here, we no longer have workgroup, we have my domain name. So in your case, it would be yours. Now that this is complete, we need to go back to our main dashboard, and we're going to add some roles and features to this server that are necessary for being able to promote this to a domain controller. This is just an informational screen. There's nothing to do here, so click Next. We choose the default role-based or feature-based installation. We're not doing anything with remote desktop, so that's why we would choose the default here. Click Next. We are just identifying the fact that this is the server we're on, and this is the one we're going to be adding these roles and features to. Click Next. In this case, we're going to come to the list and choose Active Directory Domain Services only. It's going to let us know that there are some additional features that it will install. Click Add Features. Click Next. We do not need anything else to complete this install, so we'll just click Next. Review this informational screen at your leisure about Azure Active Directory and click Next. We're going to come up to the top here and choose Restart the destination server if required and click Yes. Now, this is okay in a lab, but if your corporate policy forbids you from rebooting without a change request, then you'll want to hold off on the automatic reboot and then plan for this reboot to occur during a time that works for your organization. Again, we're in a lab and it's okay if I restart, so I'm going to go ahead and choose Yes. And then the final step to kicking this off is Install. Now this install process does take a little bit of time Typically, I've seen anywhere from around 3 to 5 minutes. I'm going to pause it, and then when this is complete, I'll pick back up with our instructions. Now that the feature installation has succeeded, we're going to go ahead and click Close. So in order to promote this to a read-only domain controller at this point, we're going to go ahead and leverage this warning triangle at the top of the window. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and then choose Promote this server to a domain controller. It'll take just a moment for this to load. And essentially, we're going to leave the default of adding a domain controller to an existing domain. Our domain is the domain that you set up on the original domain controller. So in my case, it's miller.com. And I'm going to go ahead and supply the credentials. You'll notice in my case, it's the local workstation name administrator. So I'm actually going to change that. That should be referencing your domain. So now you can see my domain is listed, and then I'll click OK. It has now switched the credentials to my domain administrator, and then I'm going to go ahead and choose Next. The next screen is where the magic happens for the read-only domain controller. So first, you'll notice there are 3 checkboxes. The first one is identifying this server as a DNS server. Well, we never added any DNS roles or features, so it'll be important to uncheck that for this particular system. The next item in the list here is the global catalog. Now, your global catalog role on a domain controller is leveraged for faster searches of data within Active Directory. And so personally, I find that it works very well if most, if not all, of your domain controllers are global catalog servers. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and leave this checked. Now, in terms of the actual read-only domain controller, there is a box here you'll need to check. And this is what will basically allow it to be a domain controller, but you won't be able to make any changes from here. It'll still be able to service your remote site, but again, no changes can be made. Our default first site was the default, so we won't be changing this. And then for this server, we will need to fill in a directory services restore mode password. This is a password that's only required if a restore is necessary, an unexpected restore, I should say. So keep this password handy, put it in a password vault or something similar so that it can be found down the road if needed. Once that's complete, I'll click Next. This next screen has some read-only options that you'll want to review. So first of all, will there be a delegated administrator account? For the purposes of our lab, I'm going to go ahead and set up our actual administrator as this account. This may be something else. It could even potentially be a group. So I mentioned it could be a group. I'm going to go ahead and choose that instead. I think it's helpful to see that you could essentially put a group here that might allow a very select group of users that might have some additional rights here. Now, there are a couple other things here. So accounts that will be allowed to replicate passwords. I would absolutely leave this default in place. So the allowed RODC password replication group has accounts in it that will definitely need this to be set for this process to work. And then accounts that will not be able to replicate passwords, by default, the administrators group cannot, server operators cannot, backup operators cannot, account operators cannot, and then there's also a denied group. So if you need very specific people to be denied the ability to replicate passwords to this server, you could put them in here. So as a whole, we're selecting the defaults. Click Next. On this particular screen, we could choose specific install media that won't be necessary for what we're doing. And then the other thing is we can specify our replication partners. I've had some issues over the years specifying these manually, so I typically let the replication partners set themselves up by default. You can review them though and confirm that you are getting the results you need with this approach. And you can then manually modify the replication partners if you need to at a later time. So again, here we'll choose the default and click Next. In terms of the location of the Active Directory, database, log files, and sysvol, these should be on the C drive for production or a lab, so we'll leave these be and click Next. If you're interested in creating additional read-only domain controllers with PowerShell, you do have the option to view a script, and you could save this or copy and paste it even, and use this to automate deployment of additional read-only domain controllers. For what we're doing today, we're just going to close this and then click Next. Now, the security warning that's listed here is not anything that will hold us back from moving forward. If it is something that is a bother to your organization, or if your security team doesn't approve of this warning, then feel free to resolve it. But you'll notice right below it that we've passed all of our prerequisites and we can install. Also notice at the very bottom there is a warning here. It says if you click Install, the server will automatically reboot at the end of this promotion. Click Install. This will take some time, so I'm going to go ahead and just pause the video, and when it's complete, we'll resume. As you can see, the process has completed, and it's going to go ahead and automatically restart. Now that the server is back online, we'll need to go into the Start button. We're going to go to Windows Administrative Tools, and we're just going to confirm that we have Active Directory, Users and Computers. We'll go ahead and click that. And we now have our read-only domain controller in our list of domain controllers in Active Directory. And you can clearly see that it is identifying it as a read-only domain controller. And if you were to test the behavior of this system, you would not be able to make any changes to users or groups. With that, that completes this lab. I hope you enjoyed it.